Hello and welcome to my Tommy's Matchbook guide for PvP. I know this one has taken a bit to come, but honestly I've just been getting a little lazy. I don't have any excuse for that, but here it is finally, and I don't want this one to be as long as the Trinity guide, so I'm just gonna try to make this one quick. But before we start, I do have two things I wanna say, although if you don't wanna hear any of that, you can go to this timestamp and go straight to the guide. Now for the people who are staying, the first thing that I want to say is that at the time of recording this video, the channel just hit 1k subs, so thanks a lot for that. It's really amazing to know that there are people who are actually watching my videos, and just know that I still have a lot of videos that I want to make. There's gonna be more smaller guides coming in the future, maybe even build videos, but of course the main thing is always gonna be the clip dumps or montages, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, I still have a lot that I want to do in the channel. The second thing that I want to say is that this is gonna be the last time Tommy's Matchbook is gonna make an appearance in any video, because I'm just not gonna use Tommy's Matchbook anymore. I will explain the why later in the video. There is a chapter specifically made to explain that, but I just wanted to make it clear that I am not using Tommy's Matchbook anymore. So I guess you can take this guide as a way of me just passing the mantle to whoever wants to pick Tommy's Matchbook up. Disclaimer, it may or not be as fun as it looks, so just keep that in mind. So the things that I'm gonna be focusing on in this video is going to be Tommy's Matchbook itself. Then I'm gonna talk about what I consider to be the best build for each class. Then I'm gonna talk about the best options in regards of the set bonuses that we have currently in the game. And finally, I'm gonna talk about the problem with Tommy's Matchbook and the reason I'm not gonna be using it anymore. And so, let's get on it. Starting off with Tommy's Matchbook itself, Tommy's is a pretty solid auto rifle that benefits a lot from pre-firing, even if it doesn't directly say so inside of the exotic perks. In fact, the gun does everything in its power to make you hip fire instead of using your ADS. So if you shoot while ADS, you will actually notice that the gun has a lot of random recoil. It just shakes left and right, and it makes it really hard for you to hit your shots. But as soon as you hip fire, you notice that the gun actually feels pretty good. Be it on a MK or controller, it actually feels great. So what Bungie did here is that normally with any weapon, if you crouch, you get minus 50% recoil. So what they did with Tommy's is that you don't need to crouch to get that recoil decrease. Instead, that decrease is triggered by hip firing. So when you are hip firing, you get minus 50% recoil, and no, it doesn't stack by crouching because it is the same decrease that's activated there. What is pretty interesting is that the recoil reduction will carry over to ADS if you start shooting while hip firing before you ADS. In addition to that, the hip fire just gets an insane accuracy cone size and cone growth decrease, which basically means that you will not get as much bloom as you get with other weapons while hip firing. So yeah, the gun should feel, and it does feel, pretty great in hip fire, and it's surprising that it doesn't say so directly inside of the gun's description. Now actually talking about the exotic perks, the main exotic perk from Tommy's Matchbook called Ignition Trigger reads as following: sustain fire with this weapon overhits it, increasing damage but burning the user. What this means in reality is that if you shoot 20 consecutive bullets in full auto, Ignition Trigger will proc. While Ignition Trigger is proc, you will start filling up a hit meter, but it will also start draining your health. While you're shooting and Ignition Trigger is proc, the hit meter starts filling up 20% points per second. If you stop shooting, then the meter will start decreasing 25% points per second. Now while the meter has any amount of energy, you will get 50% damage increase inside of PvP. The optimal time to kill will go from 0.75 seconds, hitting 10 crits, all the way down to 0.5 seconds, only having to hit 6 crits and 1 body shot. As for the health drain, if you shoot while the meter is up, you will start losing 15 HP per tick, which happens every 0.4 seconds. But Ignition Trigger will only drain your shields, not your actual health bar, which means it should take around 9 ticks of damage for you to lose all of your shields. That is, of course, if you're not already taking damage from somewhere else. So because of the nature of Ignition Trigger, pre-fire works really well with Thomas. So what you might want to do is pre-fire a lane if you know somebody's gonna pick that lane, and by the time they pick, you most likely already have Ignition Trigger proc. And this also works the other way around. So instead of waiting for someone else to pick, you pre-fire before you pick the lane, and by the time you pick, you most likely already have Ignition Trigger proc. Another way of taking advantage of Ignition Trigger will be when switching targets. With other weapons, you'd probably stop shooting in between targets, but because of Ignition Trigger, you might want to keep shooting while switching targets if your hit meter is still low. I would say that if the hit meter is somewhere around 30%, you don't really need to keep shooting. The secondary exotic perk, called Heatsink, reads, overheat damage is reduced while not aiming down sights, which more technically means that instead of 15 HP per tick, if you are hip firing, you will lose 7.5 HP per tick, which means it should now take around 18 ticks of damage for you to lose all of your shields. So as you can see, that is actually a pretty substantial difference. So that is yet another reason to not ADS Tommy's Matchbook and only use the hipfire. That said though, there will be cases where you are gonna have to ADS Tommy's Matchbook because hipfire doesn't have that much range. As for the catalyst, it reads, while Ignition Trigger is active, final blows with this weapon cure you and sustained fire scorches your target. Now the first part about cure is pretty straightforward. While the hit meter is up, if you get a kill with homies, you will get cure times 1. The second part about Scorch though is a little bit misleading. It says sustained fire scorches your target, though that's not 100% accurate because in reality, while you have Ignition Trigger proc, it's every 5th bullet that will scorch your target. So it's not necessarily that the more you shoot someone, the more scorch you will apply. It will apply 10 scorch every 5th shot, which I actually don't like because it means that if you were to miss that one shot that scorches, then you are not gonna scorch, and that makes it pretty hard for you to pair Tommy's Matchbook with scorch builds. Although, if I'm being fair, I'm gonna say right now, it doesn't really matter that much. Because, and I guess I'm gonna use this as my transition, even though you get cure, even though you barely scored targets, Solar doesn't really cut it for Tommy's Matchbook because most of the time, if you get restoration, you're gonna get restoration times 1, which is pretty slow for the amount of health that you are losing. And like I said before, it's pretty hard to pair Tommy's with Scorch builds because if you miss that one shot that scorches, then you're not gonna scorch and it's not gonna proc any scorch fragments or anything of that sort. So instead of Solar, the best subclass to use on every class, it's gonna be Void, because Void gives you this small thing that's called Devour. On kill, Devour will give you 70 health combined with cure times 1, which gives 30 health. Now for every kill you will get 100 health, and that's not taking into account other sources of healing. And the second reason why Void is so good with Thomas is because of Void Overshield. The HP drain from Ignition Trigger actually works pretty weird in a way that you're not actually taking incoming damage, you're just getting part of your shields removed from your health bar. I'm not exactly sure about how that works because it will, for example, take points off your Rift Overshield, but it will not take any point of damage from your Void Overshield. So if you happen to get a Void Overshield and you proc Ignition Trigger, you will start losing point of health below your Overshield, but your Overshield will stay completely intact unless you are actually taking damage from somewhere else. So the reason this is insane is because Void Overheal gives you a total of 40 HP if it's full, which means that you are allowed to lose 40 HP from Ignition Trigger and you will technically still be full health. Those are the two things that make Void really great for Thomas Matchbook. You lose health to gain health. That gives Thomas Matchbook this great thing that we love to call risk reward. The risk that you lose health for a damage buff, and the reward is that on kill you get all of your health back so you can keep mowing people. So for the builds, I'm gonna talk about the whole loop of the build because there's really no one thing that's gonna exist on its own. So I guess now starting with the Warlock build, which is in my opinion going to be the strongest one. So starting with the subclass, we are going to be using Empower and Rift because we are using Seek and Filaments. Seek and Filaments will give you on-demand Devour every time you use your Rift. So you get your Rift, you proc Devour. Every time you proc Devour, you get your health back. So it's a heal on demand and you get Devour. That's insane. So because of Seek and Filaments, we're also gonna use Child of the Old Gods. We all know how it works. You shoot at a target, your Void Soul goes and finds them. Even if they live in the other side of the world, it will go after them. It will plant itself in the middle of the area. It will start tagging people within a radius. It's gonna weaken them. It's gonna make them lose a bit of health. And if you have an Empower Rift on, every time it tags a target, it will give you 25 HP back at you. So this is yet another source of healing, which is very useful for Thomas Matchbook. And on top of that, if you kill a player who is inside the Void Soul radius, it will give you class ability energy back, which means you can keep looping rifts and Void Souls. Something else to note about Empower Rift is that after the Ash of Iron update, it will be getting a buff, which will make it so if you are standing in an Empower Rift, you will get grenade, melee, and class ability energy over time. Now you're only melee, which is Pocket Singularity. Pocket Singularity is extremely great for hitting people behind cover, because as long as it can track someone, it will make a 90-degree angle just to push them off of cover. And it's also great for pushing people back, unless you are really unlucky, which then it will probably push them towards you, which happens, but most of the time you will push them back or just away from you. But it will also make people volatile. Volatile is great because we have this one fragment called Echo of Cessation, which means you will create void breaches if you kill a volatile target. Why do we want void breaches? Because of Echo Starvation. Picking up a void breach will give us Devour. And on top of that, we have Feed the Void, which means that every kill with the void ability will give us Devour. It also says that our Devour effects are improved, which means we get more health. So instead of 70 HP like usual, we are going to get 140 HP combined with Cure times 1. You will get 170 on kill, and on top of that you get more grenade energy on kill, which helps a lot because Void has this crazy grenade, scatter grenade. You just throw it in the general direction, it will do a lot of damage. So most of the time it's pretty great to use it as a finisher. So you get the scatter grenade kill, it's a void ability, so it gives you Devour because of the void, and it just keeps looping. As for the other fragments, we have Echo of Vigilance, which is a must because Tommy's Matchbook will deplete all of your shields. So if you have no shield and you get a kill, Echo of Vigilance will give you a Void Overshield. And I already talked about why Void Overshields are insanely good with Tommy's Matchbook. Another possible must-have is Echo of Dilation. So it will make it so when you crouch, you sneak faster. What this means in reality is that it will set your crouch speed at 4 meters per second. So for comparison, the most you could get at 100 mobility, I believe it used to be 3.7 meters per second, 2.8 meters per second, something like that. As for the stats, since you're using Seek and Filaments, of course you want to have a lot of class, but the most important stat is going to be your health stat. Now at the time of making this, I don't have a lot of good armor for this, but I believe you want somewhere around 150 and 180 health stat. And the reason the health stat is so great it is because once you stop using your ignition trigger, you want to start regaining all of that health back really fast. And trust me, the health stat is really busted on those higher thresholds. Above 180, I guess more is better, but 180 is like a really sweet spot, and you really don't want to use up all of your stats on your health stat. You want to leave some for the rest of your stats, because I believe that grenade and melee are pretty important as well. Class is pretty important as well. You don't really need weapon stat, because the weapon stat doesn't really help Tommy's at all, so don't bother investing in the weapon stat. It's not worth it. And I guess if you want to use this for trials or comp, your super stat kind of matters, so you should also keep that in mind. And to finish with Warlock, here are the mods. Obviously I use a targeting. Siphons are really great because if you get a double kill, you're gonna make an orb. Orb heals you and gives you Devour. Solo loader and dexterity are pretty important because Thomas has horrible stats. So the loader is pretty important for the reload speed, and the dexterity is really important for the swap speed. Unflinchings are also pretty important because again Thomas has pretty horrible stats, which means it needs some help with the unflinching. Although I should add that because of the crazy recoil that it has on ADS, it's not as noticeable for ADS, but it is pretty noticeable for hipfire. I would recommend running triple athletics because since Tommy's Matchbook allows you to hipfire, that means you can take a lot of advantage of your strafe speed. So you really want to have that strafe speed, and that is why Crouch of Dilation is also pretty important since it allows you to crouch strafe faster. And the ones on the class item aren't really that important other than Reaper because you are using your Rift a lot. So every time you use your Rift, proc Reaper, you get a kill, you get an orb, then you get a double kill, you get another orb, the orbs heal you and give you Devour. Once you start using this build, you start learning, it all comes together. It's pretty amazing. At least in theory it is. Now for the Hunter, we are using RDMs, which is the main focus of the build besides Thomas. What they do is that they buff the hell out of your primary, especially when you are hip firing. So they give you 30 mobility, a bunch of range, a bunch of accuracy for your hip fire, and when you get a primary weapon kill, you will get extra dodge charges as long as you already have one dodge charge. And I think you can tell why this is insane for Thomas, because you get crazy straight speed as well, which makes this exotic the peacekeepers of Thomas Matchbook. So for the subclass, we are using Marksman Dodge, not Gamblers, because Marksman Dodge allows us to reload Thomas Matchbook pretty quick. And since we have our DMs on, we can get a primary kill, dodge, reload Thomas, proc Reaper, either in the same kill or on the next kill, make an orb, that orb will give us Devour, and Devour will heal us. Again, we are using Vigilance and Dilation. Since we have Vanishing Step, every time we dodge, we also go Invis, which is going to proc on the Prowl. So we are going to mark our next target if they are close, and if we kill that target, it will create a Smoke Bomb, which will also apply Weaken, similar to our Snare Bombs. And the first time we go invisible with that Smoke Bomb, it will give us increased reload speed, which we don't necessarily need, increased stability, which is actually great for Thomas. It will also give us ability energy for all abilities. It means we get to use more smoke bombs. Now weakening on both smoke bombs is great because we are using Echo of Harvest, which means defeating weakened targets makes an orb power and a void bridge, so that will proc more Devour. And to seal the deal, we are using Scatter Grenades with Echo of Undermining, which is gonna make our Scatter Grenade weaken as well, so not only will deal more damage, it will proc Echo of Harvest, which will give us Devour with Starvation. So all of these has a really crazy loop, which is get a kill, dodge, get a kill, dodge, get a kill, dodge, heal with Devour, get overshield. It is also pretty straightforward, but it's just crazy. As for the mods, they are pretty much the same as I have on my Warlock. Just know that Reaper is a must-have in this build because it's the main way you are going to get Devour. And for Titan, we are going to be using Mask of the Quiet One. A Mask of the Quiet One forces you to use a Void Super, but that doesn't matter because we are using Void anyways. When you get a kill at critical health, you will just instantly get Devoured. So basically you get Devoured by playing normally, and if people shoot at you, you get a little bit of ability energy for all of your abilities. So you can already tell why this is great. You're at critical health, you get a kill, you just get Devoured for no reason. Echo Vigilance also proc, you get an overshield, so now you have probably full health with an overshield on top of that. So we are using Tower and Barricade with Bastion. So not only do we get Devour for no reason, we also have an overshield on demand. Barricades with Tommy's are really great because that means you can make cover for yourself to pre-fire, and as you pre-fire your ignition trigger, you come out of the barricade with an overshield. If the other person is not prepared for that, then they're pretty much screwed. And then we have Control Demolition to make our abilities apply volatile, and every time we trigger that volatile explosion, we are going to get 90 HP back. So in that scenario, which is not uncommon at all, you will be getting 190 total HP back. So naturally, we are going to use the most busted abilities that we have on the Void Titan kit, which are going to be a shield throw, which got buffed twice. If you throw it, you will 90% of the time hit at least one person with your shield throw. You can make this 100% of the time if you bounce your shield off the ground. Once your shield throw hits someone, it will give you an overshield. So we pretty much have 3 sources of overshield. And of course, we are using Scatter Grenades. Now the other 2 fragments that I am using are Echo of Persistence, so I can get more time on Devour, more time on my overshield, and Echo of Leeching, so I can get healed in case I get a melee kill. Now these 2 are not set in stone. If you wanted another source of Devour, you could be using Starvation with Echo of Cessation, because you are applying a lot of volatile. You get a kill on someone that's volatile, you make a Void Breach, you pick up the Void Breach, you get Devour. But I feel like Mask of the Quiet One already does its job quite well, which is why I don't believe you need Echo of Starvation, which means you don't need Echo of Cessation. Instead, you could be using Persistence to get more time on your timers. And I am using Echo of Leeching here in case I get a kill with my melee or with a shield throw, but you could be using anything else in here if you wanted to. And just to finish up, here are the mods. Again, they're the same in every class. So anyways, those were the 3 builds. And once you put them in practice, you are going to tell that they are pretty strong. Now, for the set bonuses, currently there's only 2 sets that actually matter for Tommy's. Here are the ones that we currently have in the game. The first one is the Last Discipline set, from which we only really care about the 2-piece bonus. It's called Terminal Velocity, and what it does is that on primary weapon kill, it gives you plus 20 reload speed and a 0.95 reload duration multiplier. So basically, get a primary kill, Tommy's is a primary weapon, and you get more reload speed, which is always good for Tommy's. Now, Terminal Velocity is not the best one by far. The best one is the one from the Solstice set. It's called Lustrous, and the 2-piece bonus called Photogalvanic works upon receiving any healing. As long as you're not full HP when you receive that healing, you will get around 20 handling, 10 reload speed, 0.85 reload duration multiplier, some amount of flinch resistance, which is very good for Tommy's, and to top it off, this only works for solar weapons. Now, I haven't had the chance to play with this one, but according to Compendium, it should work with any source of healing, be it Devour or pickups, cure, etc. Any source of healing will provide the buff from the Photogalvanic bonus, which is great because with our builds we are healing all of the time, and getting that increased reload speed and the flinch resistance is really nice. And the 4-piece bonus, which could actually be pretty great too, called Cauterize, what it does is that upon rapid solar final blows, you will get 35 HP back. So with the right build, you could be getting all of your health back because this is healing on top of the healing on top of the healing on top of the healing. It does have the chance to be pretty great, but according to Compendium, it procs on 3 quick solar kills. I have no way of knowing if they actually tested this inside of PvP, because there's other stuff like Unrelenting, for example, which can proc with less kills inside of PvP. So it says 3 solar kills on Compendium. Maybe it's 2 solar kills on PvP, but I don't have a quick way of testing that right now. Regardless, it's still a pretty nice thing to have, and if you are already going for the Lustrous set, why not just go all the way? the reality is that if you already have the 2-piece bonus, then you don't need terminal velocity. I will say that when I was playing with Thomas, I wasn't using any set bonuses, so the set bonuses here really are just like a nice thing to have on top of everything you already have, because these builds are in theory pretty damn strong. So now I'm gonna talk about the problem with Tommy's Matchbook. Ever since Tommy's Matchbook dropped into the game, that was on Season of the Dawn, which launched on December 10th of 2019. I am recording this part on August 17th of 2025. So Tommy's Matchbook dropped in the game 5 years and 8 months ago. So for 5 years and 8 months, Tommy's Matchbook has had the same bug that makes the weapon really frustrating to use. And what this bug is, sometimes randomly when you shoot at another player, some of your bullets will just not register. That's it, that's the issue, but it's such a big issue that after a while of using the gun, it just gets really frustrating, because hearing about it makes you think like maybe it's like 1 or 2 bullets that don't register, which would be fine if it was 1 or 2 bullets. The way it actually happens is that a lot of consecutive bullets that are hitting a target will just not register, and if you want them to register, you need to keep shooting at them until they do. And sometimes you're just gonna lose the gunfight and no damage will register at all. I have tried to pinpoint the source of this, but I just cannot replicate it in a consistent way that will create some form of offset or some way to avoid it. It just happens randomly. It doesn't matter if you have ignition trigger proc or not. Doesn't matter if you're ADSing or hip fire. Doesn't matter if you're in the air or in the floor. It's not AE. That's not the problem. It just happens randomly, and it's really frustrating that you are jumping all these hoops to get Devour, get overheal, ignition trigger proc, increase reload speed, then for your gun to just deal 0 damage. It's just not ideal. And maybe if you use it for like few matches, right, it's just not as noticeable, but the more you use it, the more you notice it. And you know, putting up 10,000 kills of that, it gets to a point where it's just really frustrating because it just doesn't work the way it should. And I know there's a lot that's going on in the game and at Bungie for them to fix the one gun that nobody uses, nor PvE or PvP. So you know, why should I care? And yeah, I agree that's a pretty good reason to not care about it for 5 years and 8 months. But then again, 5 years and 8 months is a long time. But the thing that really pisses me off is that they have reworked Tommy's, I believe, twice in that span of time. But it's so obvious that they did not try in PvP, they only tried Tommy's in PvE. As per usual, I am sure that most of the testing that happens inside of Bungie is inside of PvE. I really don't think they test everything inside of PvP, even though they really should. I don't think they do. So I'm sending Tommy's Matchbook off properly with the 10k video and with this guide. So if anybody is crazy enough to put more than 11,000 kills on Tommy's Matchbook, then you know, you can go at it. If you want to do that, do it, because I am not putting any more kills than I already have in it. Or who knows, maybe I will use it every now and then, because I do like the way the gun feels. I do like the idea of risk reward, but it's so annoying when you put in the risk and you get no reward because your gun does 0 damage. So yeah, I'm just not gonna main Tommy's anymore. But anyways, I don't have much more to say than that. I will leave you guys off with some clips about this hit rate issue, so you actually have examples of what I'm talking about, because it's pretty crazy. When it happens, it just makes me want to pull my ass out. But yeah, thank you for watching the video. If you have any question about anything I missed or anything you want to add, put it down in the comments. Just if you're gonna ask something, please make sure that no one else has already asked that question. And if you are pointing out something of worth, I will add that inside of a pinned comment that I'm gonna have down there. So yeah, again, thank you for watching the video. This is not the last guide I'm gonna make though. I will make more Trinity guides in the future, maybe build guides. I don't know, I'm still working on that. Yeah, anyways, see you later.